Well, hello, it's Andrew here again, and this is episode 152. And so Jesus has arrived at Jerusalem on the beginning of Holy Week, and now we pick the narrative up at Matthew 21, verses 11 to 17. Then Jesus entered the temple and drove out all who were selling and buying in the temple. And he overturned the tables of the money changers and the seats of those who sold doves. He said to them, "It is written, my house shall be called a house of prayer, but you are making it a den of robbers." The blind and lame came to him in the temple, and he cured them. But when the chief priests and the scribes saw the amazing things that he did, and heard the children crying out in the temple, "Hosanna to the Son of David," they became angry and said to him, "Do you hear what these are saying?" Jesus said to them, "Yes, have you never read, out of the mouths of infants and nursing babes you have prepared praise for yourself." He left them, went out to the city to Bethany, and spent the night there. Now, I'm going to take this in two bites because there are two quite distinct parts. We're looking at the first part this morning. The story of Jesus cleansing the temple is in all four Gospels. And in the synoptics, which is Matthew, Mark and Luke, it is fundamentally the same. And it happens in the same time frame. Happens at the beginning of Holy Week as Jesus is on the home stretch of his earthly ministry. It's right near the end. In John's Gospel, however, it's quite different. In John's Gospel, it's positioned at the start of Jesus' ministry. Now, it's true that in both accounts, both in John and the Synoptics, it's leading up to Passover. But as I said, in John's account, it's at the beginning. And in John's account, he's much more calculated. This is the one where he basically takes some time to form a whip to drive the animals from the temple. So nobody can actually knows what he's doing. They're not anticipating what he might be doing. And the response of the religious leaders actually in John's Gospel is quite different. They ask him in their account on what authority he has, or does he think he has, in order to do this. My hunch is that this could be different. One of my favourite expository preachers, Darrell Johnson, is strongly of the view that there are two events happening here. There's one that does happen at the beginning. He's a man who has a great affection for John's Gospel. John is his favourite of all the scriptural writers, his Gospel. And so he is not going to countenance the idea that John might have got it wrong and the other three might have got it right. In fact, he would point out they don't need to actually have to choose. So that when you come to the Synoptics account at the end, there's a sense of, we've been here before with the religious leaders, and they may be more ready for him. And Jesus, in the account that we've read, moves quite quickly. So that's where we are with that. Let me see where we are. Okay. Now, in Mark's Gospel, which we didn't read today, there's an addition to one of the things that Jesus says. In Mark's Gospel, Jesus is recorded as saying, "My house shall be called a house of prayer for all nations." The "for all nations" is omitted in Matthew's account here, the one that we've read. And this reminds us that the part of the temple courts that is so chocked up with merchant and money changers is the court of the Gentiles. The only part of the precincts, the temple precincts, to which Gentiles could be admitted. It's the farthest from the sanctuary of the Holy of Holies. This was available, this was all that was available to them if they wanted to pray and offer worship to the covenant God of Israel. Oops, where is this going? On the other hand, Matthew, who doesn't have of all nations, adds something else. Matthew adds, "The blind and the lame came to him in the temple, and he cured them. And what Matthew is pointing to, I believe, is beautifully captured by Eugene Peterson in The Message. And he puts it like this: there was no room for the blind and the crippled to get in. They came to Jesus and he healed them. And I think he's right. I think it's in the intent in Matthew's Gospel that this is about making room. Making room for a different group of people. Mark focuses on the stranger. He focuses on the foreigners. He focuses on those that should be being modelled to and given access to Yahweh, to the God of Israel, and aren't because they're so choked up. Whereas Matthew here focuses on the least. He focuses on the most vulnerable and the dispossessed of their own people that Jesus is wanting to make sure get access to divine grace. It's worth noticing that none of the people that drove out were totally evil. I don't believe that for a moment. While they were clearly there to make a living, they were also there to provide a necessary service. And that got me thinking, I wonder how this all started. There would have been a time when the temple courts were clear of merchants. They wouldn't have dreamed of putting in merchants or money changers in the temple courts. It wouldn't have been on the radar at all. So how did it start? I wondered if it started because the streets were getting too crowded for those who sold the animals, the birds, for worshippers to be able to make their prescribed sacrifices, and for the money changers to be able to change all the foreign and secular currencies in order to be able to purchase the temple coin, which was acceptable in the temple. And perhaps an executive decision to be made at some time, you can see how it would happen, wouldn't you? To initially allow just someone to take a small and tightly constrained part of the temple court in order to relieve pressure on the outside. And over the time there was a form of creeping incrementalism. Isn't this how things happen? Oh, we just take a little bit more here and a little bit more there, and more people are looking for space. They're saying, why should they be the only ones who get to actually be able to sell or to exchange in the temple courts? Why can't we be here as well? You can see how it would all unfold. And so over a period of time, as I say, this thing grew. And not only did it affect the amount of space they took up, it also ultimately affected how rapacious, how greedy the merchants had become, knowing that they now have a captive clientele. I've just been to Auckland for a couple of days, and one can experience the same phenomenon at the airport. There is two parts to the airport. There's the side where the public side is, where everybody comes in and they have food courts and all sorts of things. But if you're flying out, you then have to pass through security. You take your bags, everything you're taking on the plane, not your checked-in bag, but your laptops and all that sort of stuff. And they all have to go get scanned, and you have to get scanned to make sure that you're not carrying anything nasty onto the aircraft. So you go through this rigmarole of going through security, and now you're on the boarding side of the airport. It's a secure area. But sometimes you can be there for quite a while, and there are cafes and things there to cope with that as well. But one can't help noticing the food is actually quite expensive. I mean, it really is quite expensive. A small bottle of water can cost you $5, and I think, okay. And you can see that they know that they've got a captive clientele, and if you want to have a bottle of water, you've got to pay for it. That's it. Either that, or you've got to pick up your bags, because you can't leave stuff lying around at an airport, and go back through all the thing, get on the other side, and then come through the whole process again. And people just can't be bothered with that. So you can see how that can happen. And I can also imagine that at the airport they're also charged, like a wounded bull, to actually have space on the boarding side, actually anywhere in the airport. To actually get some space, they will be paying a very high rental to the airport company. And I don't imagine it was too much different in the temple courts. The temple authorities would have seen this also as an opportunity to make some money. Another way of increasing their income stream by having lots of traders in the court of the Gentiles, and to be able to extract as much from them as was possible. And so we can see how this whole thing escalates. Everyone clipping the ticket. What starts off as a necessary service and a ministry has now become simply a business where profit becomes the primary motive. It's a reminder to all of us, isn't it? How easy it is to lose sight of the point of it all. We start off something with such good intent. Over a period of time, it just becomes habit. And we lose the sense of what it was that motivated us and brought us in here in the first place. But it's easier just to stay the way it is rather than changing. It's easy in the end, isn't it, to lose sight of the one that we set out to serve. We can do this in ministry, in all kinds of ministry. We just keep doing it because we have always done it, and somewhere along the line, the passion, the love, the energy that got us started in this, the sense of vision, just has kind of leaked out somewhere. It needs to be either rediscovered, reinvented, or maybe reconsidered, though we can say, well, maybe it's time we drew this to a close. Anyway, I hope that's been helpful. God bless you.